given the possession of the Diocese of Sioux City as their 8th bishop.
A moment of transition 3 years in the making as the new bishop of the Diocese of Sioux City was seated this afternoon, a moment you saw live right here on KTIV. The Diocese of Sioux City has now ordained its 8th bishop in its 123-year history. Bishop John Keehner was ordained during a service steeped in tradition inside the Cathedral of the Epiphany. It's a ceremony centuries old, filled with parochial pomp and Catholic circumstance.
Do you resolve to proclaim the gospel of Christ faithfully and unfailingly?
I do.
The ordination of the Diocese of Sioux City's newest bishop, John Keehner, the 8th in its 123-year history.
This isn't just a ceremonial act that we're about here this afternoon. It is an act of deep faith. Faith in God's providence, faith in the church, and faith in a man God has called and shaped for this moment.
Since his appointment was announced in February, Keehner has spent months preparing to shepherd his new flock that's 85,000 Catholics strong.
This mission isn't rooted in privilege or power. It is rooted in service. Bishop-elect Keehner understands this.
For Keehner, the Mass and what it meant brought deep emotions to the surface, especially when talking about his parents who have passed on.
I'm grateful to my parents, John and Betty, who were good people. Who worked hard and who lived simple lives, for teaching me the meaning of true love.
And even though his faith means moving farther from his family in Ohio, he's found a new one in Northwest Iowa.
Well, I will certainly miss Ohio. I'm so happy to make my new home here in Iowa among all of you.
With the ordination of Bishop John Keehner, Bishop R. Walker Nicholas becomes the Bishop Emeritus. And if you're wondering what his future holds, Nicholas says after 19 years shepherding the diocese, he plans to stay in Sioux City a little bit longer before returning to Colorado, where he still has 9 brothers and sisters.